Deputy Librarian here at Maynooth University Library, who's going to tell us about the online poetry workshop that she has run. And over to you, Helen.
Thank you very much. Just bringing up my slides now. Great, can everybody see that okay? Can people hear me?
Yes, Helen, yeah, absolutely.
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah. Good morning, everybody. So my talk this morning is on the Kinsarawiwa Poetry Workshop. So just to give a little bit of context for the workshop, the context was a special collection, the Kinsarawiwa collection, which Maynooth University received in 2011. And this was the death row correspondence, letters and poems Kinsarawiwa sent to Irish nun Sister Majella McCarran. And Sarawiwa was executed despite the efforts of Sister Majella McCarran and many others to save his life. And the reason he was executed was because of his activity in protesting against Shell and their destruction of his homeland, Ogoni, in the Niger Delta area of Nigeria. And that's one of the photographs that came with the collection as well, so a very valuable collection. We worked on the collection, and the letters and the poems with contextual essays were published in 2013 by myself and 2 other colleagues, and a second edition came out in 2019. Now, we decided to run a poetry competition, and for the last 2 years we've had that in collaboration with a local school, and it is or was for transition year students. And that's Sister Majella McCarran in 2018 with the winners and runners up in that year. And that is the 2019 Majella, the winner, her mother, and the poet Jessica Traynor, who judged the competition. Because this is the 25th anniversary of the execution of Kinsarawiwa, we decided to have an open poetry competition this year. And it has 2 categories. The school category is transition year and beyond, and the adult category is over 18. Now, we planned an on-site workshop for Saturday, the 18th of April, with poet and creative writing teacher Jessica Traynor, who, as I say, previously judged the poetry competition. And the workshop, we couldn't obviously have it face-to-face, so we decided to change to Zoom, and Jessica herself was already using Zoom in other workshops. So we advertised it via our social media, and bookings was via Eventbrite. There was a very large level of interest, and places were booked out within a few days. A waiting list was established, and a second workshop scheduled for 3 weeks later. So how the workshop worked? Well, it was from 11 to 1 on a Saturday, and Jessica set it up in her own Zoom account. 15 people attended each workshop. Myself and Elaine Bean, who were the organisers, we sat in on the Zoom workshop each time. And I gave some very brief background on Kinsarawiwa, and then people began the writing workshop. And Jessica used a series of prompts using a poem as a starting point with each prompt. And I'll show how that worked in a moment. So she read a poem, people were assigned a 10-minute writing task, and after that there was some brief sharing of writing. So here's the first writing prompt, and it was based, she read out Morning Song, a poem by Kinsarawiwa, which he wrote while in military detention, and it was one of the items smuggled out in bread baskets that eventually made their way to Sister Majella McCarran. And in that poem, Sarawiwa illustrated that beauty can be found everywhere. So participants were given the task here, and the idea behind this was to get them to write about a place they found beautiful in some way, but Jessica emphasized it didn't have to be traditionally beautiful. The second writing poem was also based on a poem by Sarawiwa, and it was what Jessica called a rant. And in that poem, it's called Agony, Agony, Sarawiwa is venting his anger at the destruction of his homeland, Agony. So after that, people were asked to spend 10 minutes writing on a topic that made them angry. And Jessica mentioned that there can be humor in anger, which I thought was an interesting idea and also perhaps quite liberating for people. Okay. She then had further prompts. There were about 4 or 5 more, and they drew on other poets. So we moved away from Ken Saro-Wiwa's poems, but she used a poem to illustrate a theme. And the themes were the gifts of nature, the coronavirus crisis, and immigration and immigration. And I should say Jessica Traynor is the editor with Stephen Ray of the book Correspondence, which is written by people in direct provision, and it was calling for an end to direct provision. So she actually talked about a little bit about that as well. So that gave a good context. Okay, so all of that took each of the prompts took 10 minutes, then 10 minutes of sharing, and all of that took 2 hours. After the workshop, we asked people for feedback, and I'm just going to show you a small selection here. Mari from Mayo, it felt like we were in each other's sitting rooms. Never mind sitting face to face in real life. It was incredibly intimate and engaging. I was tired afterwards, but I can't describe how this energized me. Still buzzing, and it's 3:48 a.m. Can't wait to read up on Ken Saro-Wiwa and the others discussed. And Sinead from Cork, Sinead was the youngest in the group, and I should say the group, it was interesting, both groups on each Saturday, and there were 15 in each group, they were both primarily female. In fact, the first one was all women, and the second one was a mixture of, well, it wasn't a mixture, there was one man in it. Okay, Sinead was by far the youngest person in the group, and I found her feedback interesting too. It helped to get right back to writing poetry again. She'd done that in her early teens, and the poems, and she's first year student at UCC studying government and political science, and she's really interested in social justice issues in Ireland and further afield, like the issues Ken Saro-Wiwa campaigned for. She also mentioned she hopes eventually to become a politician or work for the UN herself, so it was interesting that she engaged with it. I like this one a lot. It's Jonah in New Delhi, and she says, it made me think about how to connect the small mundane activities to the larger picture. I also appreciate as a person living in a so-called developing nation that we discussed issues that are prevalent everywhere, not just in the West. In that sense, it was a unique workshop, and I enjoyed it even more. We learned a lot from hosting this in the virtual environment. We've had events before, obviously face-to-face, including a poetry workshop, but there was new learning to begin from this. We felt we could have had more participants. Jessica had suggested keeping it to 15, which had been the number for the live workshop, but in fact it could have been much bigger than that, and if it had been perhaps maybe more, a little bit more, maybe like this morning, with more hosts and more people involved in organising that. For the future, we'll know that. It was quite intense over 2 hours. Now, it was good that people were doing a lot and felt they learned a lot, that kept coming back, that they really found, you know, it got them writing. But it might have been better if it was spread over 2.5 hours or 3 hours, and to have a break, have a breakout room like we had this morning. The interaction, the people sharing, that was really valued. People said they were really delighted to get the opportunity to read out what they were writing, and people commented on each other's poems. Myself and Elaine thought introductions would have added a more personal touch. It would have taken a little bit more time to go around 15 and maybe ask what they had written before. One thing that was really wonderful about it that you couldn't have in the print or in the face-to-face world was the inclusivity of it. And for example, the people from India, Mayo, Cork, they probably wouldn't have come to Maynooth for 2 hours, but they were actually able to participate. And in that way, it did really embody a lot of the equality ideas which Ken Saro-Wiwa stood for. So that was really wonderful. Just on a practical aspect, we did the tickets via Eventbrite. As I said, they went very quickly, but people are very quick, I think, to sign up for something, especially if it's free. Elaine followed up with an email before the workshop, and each of the workshops. A number of people did pull out, and then there were some people who booked that we never heard from, so we took it that they weren't coming. So it was just something that you can take more people in an event like this than you expect to attend, because not everybody's going to attend. And finally, just to say, this is the URL for the Ken Saro-Wiwa Poetry Competition. The closing date's the 29th of May, and as I say, there is an adult category, so hopefully some of you might consider entering that. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Helen. That was great. It's very interesting to see how creative endeavour can thrive in a virtual environment, and also interesting to note that the virtual format lent itself to greater inclusivity, which is actually something to take away from the online formats.